Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. If you're new here, hi, my name is Ellie. I'm a long distance hiker and backpacker. Over the last couple of years I've walked thousands of kilometers with my dog Otto, mainly sleeping in a tent, and one question I get asked all the time under my videos over the years is about the tent that I'm using. So today I want to talk about my tents, go into a bit more detail, and also I want to try and answer the question, if I could only pick one tent, which one would it be? So without further ado, let's jump right in. Before I get into the details, I just want to clarify that I'm quite minimalist. I don't own a lot of gear. I don't buy tons of different gear just to test it out. So if you've watched a couple of my videos, you know that I'm not like a gear testing channel. I don't own a lot of different tents. So obviously the tents I'm talking about today just are tents that work for me, that have been working well for me over the past couple of years. But of course there are many different brands and yeah, obviously it's hard to give like the one specific tent. For the last 3 years, basically since I really started through hiking with my dog Otto, I had a couple of other tents before, but mainly I've been using the Durston X-Mid-1 Solid. That was my go-to tent for thousands of kilometers. I did my jogger hike, walking the length of Britain with it. And so far I've spent a couple of hundred nights in the X-Mid-1. It's still the same tent that I've owned for over 3 years now. And yeah, I've had it in all sorts of different conditions, different weather and everything. It's not a freestanding tent, it's a trekking pole tent. So in order to put it up, you need 2 trekking poles for that. But even though I was very happy with the X-Mid-1, I've always was looking for something freestanding because I don't use trekking poles on all my hikes. I know that it's really beneficial for your knees and everything. It makes hiking way more efficient. But when I'm with my dog Otto, sometimes it's a bit hard. I'm a bit too lazy because the Otto's lead gets tangled up. Also with filming, I just a lot of the time I just end up carrying 2 poles in one hand and then have the other hand free for Otto, for my camera and everything. So I've always been looking around for something freestanding, a freestanding tent. And then when the Durston X-Dome 1 Plus came out almost 1 year ago, I think it was in October of 2024, I bought it right away because I've been very happy with my Durston X-Mid, with the quality of it, and I really liked the design of the X-Dome 1. So yeah, I bought one from the first batch, and I've been using the Durston X-Dome 1 for most of my hikes this year. So far, I think I've spent around 50 nights in it. So I want to share my thoughts on both of those tents. If you're maybe in the market for a new tent, if you're having a hard time to decide which one to go for, I just want to give you my perspective. I've divided this video into a few categories, and I want to compare both tents in these categories. If we start with the main differences and the main specifications of both tents, as I said, the X-Mid-1 is a freestanding tent, so it only goes up with trekking poles. You need 2 trekking poles, or there are replacement, like some sort of pole that you have to use. If it's not trekking poles, there are other replacement, like foldable poles, something like that. But there's no pole set where you can clip the inner 2. You need trekking poles or some other poles, and it needs to be staked out, at least the 4 corners, so that it goes up. Whereas the X-Dome is a fully freestanding tent, so you don't necessarily need to stake out the corners if it's not windy. Obviously, it's always recommended to do it, but it goes up without stakes. You can just assemble the pole set and then clip the tent, the fly, to the pole set, and then you have a freestanding tent. Nothing else is needed. When it comes to the weight, the X-Mid-1 currently weighs 980 grams. That includes like everything, I think 6 stakes, the tent fly, the inner tent, the stuff sack. The X-Dome 1 with the regular inner tent is 1035 grams, also with the stuff sack, the pole set and 6 stakes. The solid inner that I don't have at the moment is a bit heavier, but even with the solid inner, I think it weighs just under 1,100 grams. But you have to keep in mind that even though the XMID one is a bit lighter, you still obviously need the tracking poles. I mean, if you're using them anyway, you can really save a bit of weight. But if you're maybe bike packing and have to carry like extra poles, obviously they will add a little bit of weight. Or if you're like me and you end up carrying your tracking poles, a lot of the time you don't obviously get that weight saving anymore. So I feel like they're pretty similar when it comes to the weight. These are just like few details about the specifications, but obviously you can find the exact packing size, exact sizes, weight, and everything on the website. I don't want to go into all the details here, just give a rough comparison. And now for the next category, which is the setup of the tent. The XMID one, as I said, since it's a non-freestanding tent, it might take a little bit more practice in the beginning to set it up, but in my opinion, it's really simple. If you've done it a couple of times, it's really easy. You basically just need to stake out a rectangle. And that's honestly the hardest thing, getting all the angles right and not like a rectangle that's shaped like this. That's something that I would recommend that you really work on that, because your pitch really depends on how well, on how perfect your rectangle is. But if you got the hang of that, it's really easy. You just need to stake out the corner and then insert the tracking poles, and then you can use it. Has, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it has 14 guy out points all around the tent, where you can really make sure that it's really stable, where you can add cord to. The only issue that could maybe make the pitch a bit harder to achieve is if the ground is very sandy or very rocky. I mean, there obviously are options for that, and I've set up the tent on very rocky ground, but obviously that might be a bit harder. Definitely check out the small rock, big rock method for setting up the XMID. And the same goes for open shelters. If you want to set up the XMID one on a surface where you can't put in stakes or can't anchor stakes somehow, it's obviously almost impossible or very, very hard to set up. The XDOM one, in my opinion, is also very easy to set up, very intuitive. You just assemble the pole set and then you connect the pole set to all four corners, and then there's clips that attach the fly tent to the pole set. Also very, very easy. The only thing that might be a bit harder compared to the XMID is setting it up in the wind, because the structure is only stable once it's fully clipped onto the pole set. So definitely try to assemble it as quickly as possible, because it only reaches its full stability and once the fly is fully clipped to the pole set. So in my opinion, it was a bit harder if it's really windy, gusty. That's just something to keep in mind. Whereas the XMID one, even in high wind, obviously it can be a bit harder because the big fly catches the wind quite a bit. But still there's no, like, the worst thing that can happen is that a stake gets pulled out, or maybe the tracking pole is not angled right, something like that. But there's no real risk of like breaking anything. So the XMID is, in my opinion, easier to set up if it's really windy. But on the other hand, what's really easy with the XDOM is to set it up if you're in a shelter where you don't need to stake out the corners, where you can just as a protection for privacy, for insects, something like that. You can just put it up, don't use any stakes. The next category is the design of the tent. I really like the design of the XMID one. It works out well. It has two big vestibules on both sides. For me personally, most of the time I didn't need both vestibules, like both doors. Obviously it can help with ventilation, to dry the tent. For me personally, it was nice to have, but not something that was that big of a game changer for me, my experience. But what I really, really liked is that you can basically adjust how high or low you pitch it to the ground. Obviously, it depends on the length, the adjustability of your tracking pole. You can decide how high or how low you want to pitch it. Obviously, if you pitch it higher, it's easier for airflow, for ventilation. But if the weather is really bad, really windy, really wet, you can basically, and I really like that about the XMID, you can pitch it really, really close to the ground, basically the fly almost touching the ground so that no air, no rain can get under it, so that the wind can't go under it. When it comes to the X-Dome one, I really, really like the design. It's well ventilated. I really like the big vestibule area that's like covered so that no rain can get in. And also the fly tent goes a bit over the entry, which is really, really nice, really helps you protect from the elements. The only downside, in my opinion, is that the tent can't be pitched low to the ground, because obviously the pole set defines how the tent is put up. You can't adjust the height or anything. And as a result of that, there's a 5, maybe even 8 centimeters gap between the fly, where the fly ends, and the ground, which obviously helps with ventilation, but also the wind can go in, water can splash into the tent, and I've had that problem on quite a few occasions. So if I could change anything about the tent, it would probably be that I could pitch it really low to the ground. The next category is the space, the internal space of the tent. And for me personally, there's a clear winner for that. That's the X-Dome. You can already guess it from the name of the tent. It says 1+. It has a lot of space inside. It's not a rectangle on the inside, but one side is a lot wider. On the head side, it's almost, I think, 130 centimeters wide. There's lots of space for gear. In my case, for a dog, like even a bigger dog could fit easily inside with gear. When it comes to the X-Mid one, because it has 2 really large vestibules, there's not that much space inside. It's just a rectangle. It's not small or anything. Everything fits well. But if you maybe have a lot of gear and a dog, it might be a bit too small, the 1-person tent. It worked out for me, but that's also because Otto is quite a small dog. And also I'm not tall, I'm only 1 meter 60 centimeters. So there's always, for me in a tent, there's always lots of space on the side where my feet are. It's really well made. You can sit up on both sides. But in comparison, the internal space, like the width of the inner tent, it's definitely smaller. So if you have a dog, if you have a lot of gear, and if you're maybe a bit taller, then the X-Mid one might be a bit too small, a bit too narrow for you, unless you put everything in the vestibule. Next up is the durability of the tent. And for both tents, I don't have anything negative to say. The tents are really well made. My X-Mid one, as I said, I've used it for hundreds of nights so far. After well over 2,000 kilometers, it had a couple of little pinholes on the tent floor, but that was really easy to fix. I just cut out a little patch of gear tape, and on the other side that's silicone coated, I just added a little bit of liquid silicone to that. And I did the same for a couple of areas where the seam sealing tape on the inside, that's basically protecting the seams from water coming through. I've also added a little bit of liquid silicone there, and that was fine. It's still holding up great. It's still 100% waterproof, no leakage or anything. So really, really impressed with that. For the X-Dome, obviously I have only used it 1 year, so I don't have the same level of experience of miles put into the X-Dome, but so far it's been holding up great. If you've watched other videos on the X-Dome one, you maybe already know that there has been an issue with the pole set in the beginning, that the glue didn't work properly and that these inserts slid into the actual pole segments. Personally, I didn't have any problems with that, but because I got my tent from the first batch and there had been some issues, I got a new replacement pole set. So far, I didn't have any issues with the tent or the pole set whatsoever. Everything works great. I didn't have any glue failures, no breaks, nothing really. The last category I want to talk about, and maybe that's also what's most interesting for you, is the question about how stable both of these tents are in the wind, in bad weather. The X-Mid one, that's really, in my opinion, it's really, really stable. As I said, I've had it in hundreds of nights, facing all sorts of really bad conditions, strong winds, heavy rain, everything. It didn't let me down. I fully trust the tent. But, and that's important, this wasn't the case in the beginning, because if you put it up for the first time, and I've had that problem or that perception in the beginning, is that it really feels like it has a big surface area, and it has a big surface area that feels like it catches the wind quite easily, almost making it feel like it's going to be like a sail. But then I added guy lines also to these big side panels, and you can do that. There's little like loops for that. And basically, since I did that and used these in heavy wind, I didn't have any problems. It feels very stable. Obviously, it also helps if you don't center, or if you don't let this big surface area face into the wind, but angle it so that the smaller side faces into the wind. Obviously, that helps a lot too. If you stake it out properly, if you use the guy lines, it is a very stable tent. When it comes to the X-Dome 1, there's, in my opinion, or in my mind, in my head, a bit of a difference between how it actually performed for me this year and how I perceive it. Because if you search for the X-Dome on social media, on YouTube, there are quite a few videos that suggest that the tent might not be very stable in the wind, videos showing that it actually broke. And to be honest, this got to me a little bit, I'm not going to lie. That's what I mean by perceived stability, because I'm still, and if I'm being honest, I'm still a little bit hesitant. And in the back of my head, there's always this thought of, will it break? These are quite thin, the pole said, will there be any issues? But in reality, and I've used it for 50 nights this year, I didn't have any issues at all. So I probably still need a little bit of time, because for quite a few trips this year, I've had really, really great weather. And I feel like I couldn't really test it out in the beginning. But this past September, I've used it in some very wet, very windy weather, and it was fine. I think it's just the same as with the X-Dome 1. To fully trust the tent, you just need to have it in a lot of different conditions so that you know what it can handle. So that's not going to say that I think the X-Dome 1 is less stable or anything. I have nothing, for me personally, nothing to prove that this is actually true. But it's just for the X-Smith 1, I just know what it has been through. I just know what I've experienced with the X-Dome, how it performed, and I just don't have the same level of experience with the X-Dome just yet. And obviously, but that's the case for both of these tents, I never try to really push the limits of a specific tent just to see how it performs, or just to see if it will break. If the weather is really bad, I wouldn't pitch on the highest, most exposed point. For me personally, that's not something that I need to know. So take that into consideration. I didn't test it to the limits, but just in what for me are like regular hiking conditions. And for me, most of the time, that doesn't include the highest, most exposed point, because on a through hike, realistically, for me, there always has been some sort of option to manage bad weather, to go a bit lower, to go a bit behind a rock, to be a bit sheltered. Definitely keep in mind that both of these tents are lightweight tents, though there's always going to be a compromise between stability, weight, and everything. Both of these tents are not heavy-duty expedition style tents, so definitely keep that in mind and always remember, and I think that's important when it comes to stability, durability, and everything, to choose your spot where you're going to pitch the tents wisely. And now, before finishing this video, I want to answer the final question. If I could only keep one of my two tents, which one would it be? And for me, right now, it's a very close call, actually. But if I could only keep one, it would be the X-Smith one. Just because I know what it can handle. I know what we've been through. Literally, I know how much I can trust it. In the X-Smith, I really miss the internal space. I really miss it a lot. But when it comes to the stability, I think the X-Smith is still the winner. But that being said, it's been a very close call for me, in my opinion. And I think the X-Dome 1 could actually be my favorite tent. I really love the design so much. I love the space inside. I think for it to be the winner, I think I need to see a bit more how it performs if it's really bad, if the weather is really bad. But I'm really eager to test it out a bit more, and then maybe my favorite tent will change. I think there's definitely a lot of potential that the X-Dome might be my one-time, all-time favorite tent, but for now I still would go with the X-Mid 1. This is it for this video. I really hope you found it helpful. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what you think. It would also mean a lot if you consider subscribing to not miss out on any new videos. Thank you so much for watching. Happy hiking, and I see you next time.